All right, moving on to Saturday night. We're heading to the Swamp. Utah, last year's Pac-12 champion, made the Rose Bowl, got a lot coming back. Going to Florida to take on first-year head coach Billy Napier. Utah's favored in this game. They should be favored in this game. Saw it at 1.5, 2 for a while over the course of the summer, but it's up to 3 at some spots now. So market seems to be on Utah here. Total is low, 51, 51.5, depending on where you look. I said it. Utah should be the favorite here. Full disclosure, I played Florida under the 7 wins this year. I think Billy Napier's just got a bigger job on his hands than people realize. I'm not saying it's going to take 3-4 years to turn this thing around, but the reality of it is he inherited a program with a terrible culture. Florida just completely quit over the back half of last season. They had culture issues. Those aren't things that just get fixed in a year. Plus, I think Utah's just a better football team. I said they won the Pac-12 last year. A lot of SEC fans look down on the Pac-12, and I get it from the conference standpoint, but Utah is an SEC-style physical football team. Do lose 2 of their starters from last year's team on the offensive line to the draft, but this is going to be a very good offensive line once again. Their front 4 on the defensive side of the ball is dependable too. Utah's offense, I wouldn't really describe as dangerous last year. I mean, Cam Rising was a guy that took over game 3. Kyle Whittingham made the wrong quarterback decision last year. He started Charlie Brewer early in the year, and then once Cam Rising took over, that's when Utah's season really took off. But I think it's reasonable to expect a step up from Rising this year. I mean, he was kind of a game manager, took care of the football, but he didn't really flash as a downfield thrower last year. But like I said, he didn't have that full offseason knowing he was the guy. And that's something he does have this year. But the staple of this Utah offense is the running game. I mean, Tavion Thomas, over 1,000 yards a year ago, 5.5 yards per carry and 20 touchdowns. There's been a lot made of Anthony Richardson this preseason. Time will tell. I tend to be lower on him than most. The reality of it is he is unproven at this level as a passer. And Florida got a tough draw to start their season because they play Utah at home. They play Kentucky at home next week. We're going to have a great feel about where this team is at here in the first 2 weeks of the season. You see plenty of teams around the country playing cupcake schedules in the month of September. Florida doesn't get that luxury. So this is a tough spot for a young quarterback who, like I said, it's not about the talent. He's great with his legs, and that obviously adds a pretty dynamic factor to this offense, but less than 60% through the air a year ago, and did struggle with turnovers in the limited time he did play. So just because he's talented, he has the big arm. A lot about playing quarterback is about touch and feel for the offense and accuracy, and we haven't seen that consistently. Now, the sample size hasn't been big enough to where I want to completely write Anthony Richardson off, but I'm not as high on him as a lot of people are. He's just not a surefire hit for Billy Napier here in year 1. I also don't think there's much special about Florida's run game. No, they picked up some guys in the transfer portal from some of the lower levels of Division I football, but like I said, this is a SEC caliber defense that you're going up against in Utah. Perhaps Florida's biggest disappointment from a year ago was that wide receiver room. Those guys just failed to create separation, made Emory Jones' life pretty tough, and Jones had to force some throws, and I think that's why you saw his interception total be so high. Now, part of that's on him too, but I'm going to have to see something from these Florida wide receivers because I just didn't see it last year. I think it kind of held back their offense, especially later in the year. I think of Florida's offensive line very similar to LSU's. Don't think it's going to be a weakness necessarily, but, out of all the teams that Florida and LSU have had over the last 10, 12 years, these offensive lines wouldn't match up with some of the top 4 or 5 teams in that span. So don't think it's a weakness. Do think that they might have a tough time matching up with Utah. I actually like how Florida's defense should play against the run. Do think they have good frontline players along that defensive line, but my issue with Florida defensively is depth. And so that's why I kind of played their season win total under, because I think throughout the course of the season, especially in this conference, you need quality depth to be able to compete for championships. Billy Napier just doesn't have that in year 1. I know a lot of people have talked about the secondary as well as really taking a major step here in 2022. I'm going to have to see it before I believe it. On paper, I know that Cam Rising last year didn't look like a huge threat, and these Utah wide receivers aren't necessarily difference-making players, but this is a winning football team a year ago, a championship-level team, and I do think that Utah passing game will take that next step. As I look towards a play in this game, I'm not going to lay the 3 on the road with Utah. I do expect them to win the game. Once again, I have a financial investment in this game, being that I do expect Florida to lose one of these first 2 games, and if they lose both, then I'm sitting really pretty on that season win total under. But laying 3 on the road, I think that's where it should be at. And that's what you have to ask yourself sometimes. It's like, I mean, did you want them to make it, 5.5 towards Utah? No. I mean, this is probably where it should be. But just with my expectation that they do take that next step offensively, we know what Anthony Richardson can do with his legs. There should be explosive plays. I don't know how consistently Florida's going to look offensively, but with a guy like Richardson, there is that boom nature. It's kind of a boom or bust type of deal. Probably going to have some turnovers, but he's probably going to have some explosive plays both through the air and with his legs as well. So I wouldn't really feel comfortable playing this under. The reality of it is I don't have a play on this game. If this line were to come down, towards 1.5 or a 1, I'm interested to see how the market reacts to this line as we get closer to Saturday. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw some buyback on Florida. If this money line were to get into that minus 130 range, then I might fire on Utah money line. But as of now, that money line's over minus 150. That's out of my price range. So I plan on having my entire week 1 card out by Thursday. So if you do want to be certain what I am on officially, follow me on Twitter at Fordham Betting. I actually released 4 best bets on Tuesday night, 3 of those being multi-unit plays. So I will leave the link to those write-ups in the description. We started off this college football season with a 1-0 week 0. We had Illinois minus the 10.5. That was a 1.5 unit winner. Last year in college football, hit at a 55% clip, netted over 27 units. Feel even better about how I'm going to do this year. You can also see all the other week 1 game breakdowns. If you go to playlists here on the channel, it'll say week 1 previews and predictions. Click that. I'll have all of the other video breakdowns that I'm going to do in that playlist. This is going to be a great game in the Swamp. Games like this are what college football is all about. We see too many teams, like I said, who are afraid to play these tough non-conference games. Kudos to both of these teams. I just happen to believe that Billy Napier's got a tougher job ahead of him than most are willing to admit, but nevertheless should be a great game here on Saturday night.